Please explain to me this Greek then, yeah? In Acts 26:14, we fell to the ground. Is that falling, or does that mean something else? Okay.
All of them, yeah.
In Acts 9, Paul's companion stood speechless. Is that standing, or is that falling?
Or standing, being still, right? That's another
metaphorical.
option. Something is standing. It doesn't mean it's standing upright.
It could still be falling but standing.
Falling but standing.
And other things to be preserved. The ones that were in the record, I think they are intended for me.
Okay.
The ones that were forgotten.
So how do you differentiate when there are contradictory statements? Which one do you then take?
Can you give an example?
Okay, so if you look at, for example, Paul, and if you look at the description of Paul that Paul makes when he sees the vision of Jesus. So he says, if you look at Acts 22:9, okay, the men traveling with him stood speechless, hearing the voice but seeing no one.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at in Acts 9:7,
Can you give me again the
Acts 22:9.
Acts 22:9. Let me just read it in Greek so that I understand.
I've got the Greek here as well, but I can't read Greek, so you might read.
22:9. I have it here.
The men traveling with him stood speechless, hearing the voice, but seeing no one.
Okay.
They beheld the light.
Yeah.
22 verse 9. They beheld the light.
And those who were with me saw the light, but did not hear the voice of the one speaking to me. Okay?
However, the voice.
And then in Acts 9:7 it says, the companions hear the voice, but in Acts 22:9 it explicitly says that they did not hear the voice.
Okay,
so there are direct contradictions.
Your contradiction is about the word hearing, right? Is that what?
No,
you're
there's
saying?
three different descriptions given.
Yeah.
So
Three different descriptions of the same event by the same
did not
person.
hear. So that's right. So in Acts 22, let me just make a mental note. In Acts 22 verse 9 is that they saw the light and they did not hear. They did not ikusan. The one speaking. The one speaking. Okay. Now let me go to Acts chapter 9. Was it verse what?
In Acts 9:7,
Acts 9:7.
the companions hear the voice, but in Acts 22:9,
Okay, no, but they are akuntes.
they hear.
It's a different hearing.
They hear.
Right? There is a different two different words for hearing.
I
One is
understand.
for hearing and one is for understanding.
Yeah, but so
right?
they hear. So
they
they
hear, but they don't understand. It's
Okay.
harmonizable
But
within
in
the
Acts
Greek
22:9
language.
it explicitly says they did not hear the voice.
Yeah. But
They did not hear the
that's
voice.
right. Two Greek words are. One says they heard the voice in terms of they heard some sort of sound. That's what was it? Akuntes. Whereas in Acts chapter 22 is ikusan, which means they did not understand. So you can hear without understanding. Like a different language.
And what about the light?
Not understand.
And what about the light?
And
Seeing and not seeing.
okay, so let's compare the seeing.
It
Okay,
says they saw no one and they saw
That's
a light.
right.
A light is not a person.
That's right. So they could have seen the light, saw the light, but they did not see any one person.
Okay,
right?
so Acts 26:14.
Oh, so now you're jumping.
Okay, so we've resolved, right? So this contradiction is resolved.
It's not about jumping. It's
okay.
about your explanation.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether I accept it or I don't accept it, it's irrelevant.
Wow.
But that's your explanation, right?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
within
So
the Greek
in
language,
Acts-
which has a
okay,
very
Please explain to me this Greek then, yeah? In Acts 26:14, we fell to the ground.
26:14.
We fell to the ground.
When we had all fallen to the ground, I heard a voice saying to me in Aramaic, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Okay.
Yeah. So did they fall to the ground? Is that falling, or does that mean something else?
Katapesunton. Just Full down, full prostrate, yeah.
So they fell on the floor.
Yeah, fell on the ground, yeah, okay. All of them,
In
yeah.
Acts 9, Paul's companions stood speechless. So is that standing or is that falling? In
That's
another,
the
Or
expression.
standing, being still, right? That's another...
Metaphorical.
Yeah, if something is standing, it doesn't mean it's standing upright.
It could still be falling but standing.
falling but standing.
Not falling, but
Fallen but standing.
remaining not in motion, right?
Okay.
That's what it means.
And that's a problem that we.
something stops,
So this is
right?
a problem. This is a problem that we're having.
That's not
And
accurate.
the
You
issue
can
issue
sit
here is
down and
this.
Say, I won't stand for this, but you're sitting down.
So
So it still works.
So this is an issue that we have. That
I hear some voices. I don't know
this
what's
the
going on.
issue.
Well, you
The
can't
issue.
stand. That's the issue.
Well,
I can't see anything.
Let me just read the.
I'm sitting
read
and
the
standing and I'm
passage.
3 and I'm 1.
Can I get the?
No,
in,
those two don't correlate at all.
chapter 9, which verse was it again?
Are you aware of the contradictions in the Bible or
That's
not?
not contradiction.
I am.
Are you aware of
them?
them?
And
Okay.
I know
Do you think
that
it's okay to have those?
I think they're
They're okay.
They are reconcilable when you actually read it in Greek.
The contradictions
You
that
can
we said-
actually you've given me an example, and I think within the scope of the meaning of the original
Yes,
words,
yes.
they are not contradictions. So,
Okay.
so you've not
So when it
given
says
me
God
really
tempted or Satan tempted, you can reconcile that as well,
Yeah.
can you?
that can be reconciled in other ways. So is that in which part are you referring to?
Is it David? Is it that's tempted? Who's tempted?
Yeah,
David is tempted.
Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
By
either
God or by the
either
devil.
God tempts him or Satan tempts him.
yeah, that's right. I think
We can look up the verses if you want,
you
but
can,
you know.
you can actually see the same thing actually in the same book, in the book of Job, where you have first, you know, the book of Job, God meets with Satan and says, have you seen my servant Job? He is an upright man. And Job says, and Satan says, oh, but he is upright because he worships you only because he has so many riches and he has so many blessings. And then God says, okay, then take everything that he has is in your hands. Do what you want, right? And then what Satan is doing is he's destroying everything he has. All his possessions got plundered, and all his children were killed. Now, then Satan meets with God again, and God says, well, have you seen my servant Job? He is still remaining faithful, even though you have caused me to be angry at him. So here,
So God was angry with Job.
well, without reason. That's the statement, right?
No, but God
So-
was angry with Job is what I'm clarifying.
So the point I'm trying to make is that the author clearly knows that the actual proximal cause of the disaster that fell on Job is because of Satan, because Satan did this. But indirectly, because God is supervising all of it, it is also God's responsibility in
So
some
we-
sense.
so-
He allowed it.
I understand.
Right? So
I understand
in
what
that
you're saying.
sense, whatever Satan does, Satan can only do whatever God allows.
So-
if Satan does something in
understand.
your passage,
I hear what you're saying.
it also can be attributed in that God has allowed it to happen, and
Okay.
it's in some sense related to he bears the responsibility.
Okay.
So I think that is also not a contradiction because
Okay.
it's not about who
So
directly.
when
there
the
are two
Bible
different
says, so I just want
causes,
to,
right?
from my understanding, so when the Bible says that Satan tempted so and so, or
That's proximal.
God
Proximal
tempted so and so, this is you can harmonize these together.
Yeah, I think they're
Can
harmonized,
Satan tempt God
Yeah.
with what?
I suppose he can try, right?
With what?
I mean, he can.
What
he
can
could.
I
he's
want
a
to
bit
understand?
like
And I'll give you an example. I'll tell you why I'm asking this because
yeah.
the idea, because the examples that you've given, what you've said is God is the overarching
Supervising.
supervising of actions, and He's using Satan to do His handiwork.
Allowing
Quite
Satan,
that,
right?
But the problem with that was God was angry with Job. That doesn't fit with this interpretation. Why? And that's why I clarified. Why? And
in terms of actions, right?
Let me clarify. Yeah? Because ultimately, if it was a test, then there was no anger be required because God would know the outcome. And this is going to be my faithful servant. It's despite whatever circumstances I allow Satan, as you want to put it, to do to him. Yeah. And so there would be no requirement for any visceral emotional reaction.
I don't think this is an emotional reaction.
Anger is a anger is one. So
Anger,
but that's
is
why I
what-
clarified. But the
the
point,
word again is
but you-
far richer in meaning,
sure,
right?
if you want to change the word, no problem.
Well,
But that was
anger means one thing.
that was the word that
Anger means many
was
things.
given to me.
That's-
But the question I'm asking now is something different now. The reason about Satan tempting God,
Yeah.
because now the hierarchy is reversed.
Well, the hierarchy.
So tell me how. You explain to me.
What before?
You explain.
sorry,
You
can
explain to me
define
how.
what you mean by temptation?
You explain to me how you can reconcile this idea
What does temptation mean
that
for
God
you?
can God can
guess.
tempt.
No, God
God-
can be tempted.
The Satan can tempt God. You tell me. How in your same
Stir him
example,
up. Provoke,
I think-
right?
exactly, yeah.
I think provoking. is
God can be
what-
provoked.
Yeah. Well, God, Satan can try to provoke him, right?
Sin
God will, of
provokes
course.
God.
God is infinite in wisdom, infinite in goodness, so he will only do things that ultimately fall within his plan.
How do you
But-
provoke God? Somebody explain.
By sinning, for example.
By provoking him to anger. That's a phrase. The phrase "provoking me to anger" that God uses. That those people, by their sin, have provoked me to anger hundreds of times, at least 100
and that's
times.
a
in the
problem.
Bible,
That's
right?
the difference between us.
Provoking
Because
your religion.
this idea that God can be controlled by the events that are happening